What is up, everybody? Breaking news on Wednesday. Deshaun Watson, shoulder surgery, gone for the year. So we'll dive into what this means for Deshaun Watson. We'll dive into what this means for the Cleveland Browns. And, of course, the Houston Texans, who, when this draft comes around, that entire trade will all come to fruition. And it looks like they made out pretty well. Some might say they made out like bandits. So we'll dive into Deshaun Watson situation. We will go and fly around the NFL, and then some rumors about Chip Kelly, a guy that might have fired me once upon a time. Looks like he may be fired after they play the USC Trojans this week. We'll dive into it all. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate everyone that has. If you're listening to this on the podcast or want to listen on the podcast, 3 and out. You can listen to us wherever you consume your podcast, Apple, Spotify. As you can see, we got 3 and Out merch, thevolume.com. Go to thevolume.com and search 3 and Out. We got FlexFit hats. We got trucker hats. We got it all. And before we dive in on a little Deshaun Watson, we will tell you about a friend, a very good friend of mine. Grab your smartphone. And when you grab your smartphone, go to your app store. And when you go to your app store, download the official ticketing app of this podcast. They go by Gametime. And let me tell you, I hadn't been to a hockey game ever. Went to a hockey game this year. Hadn't been to a concert in a long, long time. Went to a concert this year. Hadn't been to a spring training game ever in my life. Went to a spring training game. I did it all because of Gametime. Anything you want to go to, any sporting event, college, pro, concerts, comedy shows, they have you covered. Download the Gametime app. Promo code John. Promo code John. When you use the promo code John, you get $20 off your first pair of tickets. Saving you money. These inflationary times. Is it transitory? Is it not? I don't know. I'm not an economic advisor here. But I do know if you want to save $20, just use Gametime. Promo code John. Save yourself $20. I don't even need to thank you. Just hammer that promo code. Gametime, promo code John. Deshaun Watson. The overall headline, absolutely devastating. You lose your starting quarterback, coming off easily his best half of football, helping you get a massive, massive win against a rival of yours, the Baltimore Ravens. You're 6-3. You have one of the best defenses in recent memory. You look like you got a chance, and we've been saying this from day one with this team. They do not need Mahomes or Allen. Obviously, they'd love that. But if Deshaun Watson just plays like a solid player, this team can make serious noise. They can win a ton of games in January. They can give everyone in the AFC a run for their money. They would be a Super Bowl contender with solid quarterback play. They cannot get that at a DTR who they're starting this week. PJ Walker does not bring that to the table. Deshaun hadn't brought it to the table, but having shown signs of life last week, you went, that's all you need. Just a guy to play under control, good football, give you some explosive plays. We can beat anybody. And then the news is broken this morning. I'm getting out of bed at like 6:30 a.m. and look down and see the Browns tweeted it out. Deshaun Watson out for the year. And my first thought was, adios year. And let's start with Watson, who orchestrated a trade, demanded a trade as all of Texas, every Texas masseuse was coming after him for who knows what. It was ugly. It was a PR nightmare for the guy. It's something that, let's face it, is going to follow him the rest of his life. When you get involved in something like that, you don't shake it. Not that many women alleging that much stuff. And it was ugly. He had been playing like shit. He was owed a ton of money, kind of become a laughingstock. And for the first time since the trade, he kind of had some credibility back. He looked really good, made winning plays, helped them beat Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens. Doesn't get any bigger than that if you're the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson, given the division you're in, given who you're chasing, given what you're trying to do in the AFC. And then 2 days later, and let's face it, it's been a weird season. The shoulder injury, had just had an ankle injury, potential concussion, but didn't have a concussion. The injury stuff with Deshaun, it was hard to kind of figure out what was going on. The team and him never felt like they were on the same page. watching today, and I watched a little bit of that press conference, he's in tears, basically. It sucks for him, and it definitely sucks for the team. But I think big picture, this is a guy that hasn't played that much football. 2021, did not play a game. Last year because of the suspension, 6 games. This year, because of injuries, only had played 6 games. So he'll have played in the last 3 years going into 2024, 12 football games. 12 football games. You play more games than that if you play it like Boise State or Fresno State in a given season. So the Russ situation is going to be a massive question mark next year. And let's face it, when the Browns traded for him, I didn't think of him as like an injury-riddled player, but he had torn an ACL on both knees, one in college, one in the pros. Now he has major shoulder injury. This is a player now that we have to look at when it comes to availability, separate from all the off-the-field stuff and separate from whether he's playing well or not. Can he just be on the field? And I think it's a major question mark. To me, he's an injury red flag moving forward until he plays several seasons and doesn't miss any time. And part of playing that position, let's face it, is availability. When I turn on the Chiefs, who's fucking there? Every single time. Jalen Hurts is like, he's gimping around, but he's always available. Dak Prescott, you better break his ankle. He ain't missing games. Obviously, the generation that I grew up on, Brady, Manning, Drew Brees. I mean, these guys, part of what led to their Hall of Fame careers, go to their NFL.com pages. It's a lot of 16 starts, 16 games played every single season. And part of the deal is at this position, and we'll get in from the Brown standpoint, when you're making this much money, I need to be able to count on you. I do. And listen, no player that's good or is making, they don't want to get hurt. I'm not blaming him for getting injured, but it's a huge part, and I've been part of these discussions in free agent meetings and trade meetings. Hell, even when I was in recruiting in high school, injury history, and you never know. If we had a crystal ball, no one would ever miss on a player, but that's not the case here. And now we know, and the Browns are in bed with this guy financially for years to come. So he is, I really don't think anything changed from last year to this year and now heading into next year. He's one of the biggest question marks in the National Football League. And then from the Browns' perspective, I've been hammering this home for a while once I dove into their numbers. It had to be this year. It had to be this year if he's never going to be a superstar player again. And let's face it, that was very much up and down, even with the performance in the second half last week. And this year, his cap hit was $19 million. So when you watch the Browns and all the talent on their team, you go, God, they're stacked. Well, of course they are. They're not paying their quarterback very much money. His cap hit is tiny. Well, next year, that number goes from 19 to 63 for the next 3 years, 2024, 2025, and 2026. Deshaun Watson's cap hit is $63 million. But who cares about 25 or 26? Just think about next year. You're going to lose $43 million in cap space. Now, obviously, the cap goes up a little bit, but not relative to that much money. Some of these players who are really good on your team are not going to be on it in 2024. So that gets back to Deshaun Watson. The pressure on him next year, he can't just be a middle-of-the-road guy. They're going to need him to be a top 10 guy if they want to maintain this level of play, because their defense isn't going to be a stack. Not the case. They don't have the cap space. So, like, Myles Garrett's not going anywhere. Like, is Amari Cooper on the team next year? Are they going to be able to keep both the defensive backs forever? Right? I don't know. It gets very, very difficult as time goes on and your cap hit comes up. Do you think the Chiefs wanted to trade Tyreek Hill? Do you think when they see Tyreek Hill the last couple of years, what he's doing, they go, we never thought this. We thought he sucked now. Of course not. They had to make a financial decision. Why? Because Mahomes' cap hit gets a lot larger. So you can't pay everyone. You need to restock with younger players. We'll get into the younger players. They don't have their pick. So let's face it. The Browns went all in. Last year, he could barely play. They missed the playoffs. This year, they needed it to be good. And it was going well. It had been weird how they got there, but they were 6-3, trending the right way. I probably, if this news had not come out, probably would have picked them this week against the Steelers. You'd be, God, you're going to be 7-3. You're trending in the right way. You just beat the Ravens and the Steelers. You got at Denver coming up, at the Rams, the Jags, the Bears, at Houston, the Jets, the Bengals. Like, is this an 11-win team? Now I look at a lot of these games like at Denver. Am I picking the Browns with DTR? DTR was a cute story in the preseason, and then we watched him play a regular season game. The preseason and the regular season don't parallel each other at all. And at the Rams, okay, you can win that game. The Jags, I'm not picking you with DTR or PJ Walker to win that game. Not saying you can't. You beat the Niners with PJ Walker. Easily could have lost. And I think now, can they win 4 of their last 7 games? And I don't know. I guess they have 10 more games. So can they win 4 of their last 10 and go 4-6? I guess it's on the table, right? If you're 6-3, you get not 10 games, 8 games. So can you go 4-4? I don't know. I mean, the Steelers, I got you as an L. Denver, I'm going to pick the Broncos. Rams, give you that. The Jags, L. Bears, win. At Houston, L. And then the Jets and the Bengals. So as you see, like games that be like, oh, the Jets with Deshaun Watson, you're going to win that game. At home, I don't know. I just don't. And let's face it, when Deshaun requested a trade, so it wasn't like they just traded Deshaun Watson. And anytime I've been thinking a lot about this because I was listening to Coward talk about these veteran quarterbacks. It's one thing when you hit free agency. Like when Peyton Manning hit free agency, his back was all fucked up, right? Drew Brees, once upon a time, hit free agency. He had an injured shoulder, right? Cousins, it's the Redskins. They didn't know what they were doing. Why did Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo, the 2 guys this year that hit free agency and got a lot of money, they're not any good anymore. Most teams don't trade sweet quarterbacks, right? We're like, Russell Wilson got traded. Well, Seattle had shorted him. They didn't think he could play anymore. Now, he looked good the last couple weeks, but he hadn't been very good for a while. Matt Stafford, the Lions literally just wanted to blow it up. And Matt Stafford essentially kind of requested a trade. So a lot of times when a guy gets traded, he's either requesting a trade or the guy's available for a reason. And let's face it, everything going on with Houston, like it was time, just go your separate ways, get out of business with this guy. They won. And let's face it, they kind of hit a home run because part of getting rid of Deshaun Watson helped them really suck, which led to CJ Stroud. But it wasn't just CJ Stroud. Here's what their haul that the Houston Texans got. Because they got 3 first-round picks and several middle-of-the-round picks. In 2022, they drafted Kenyon Green, who started 14 games his rookie year, was up and down, was scheduled to start again this year, hurt his shoulder on injured reserve. They feel pretty confident from texting around with some people. In 2024, it's going to be a big year for him, but he should be the starter. Will Anderson this year. They technically had the 12th pick. They traded up to get Will Anderson, who plans on being a building block for this franchise for years to come. Dameon Pierce, a running back in the 4th round in 2022. 1,200 career yards, 5 career touchdowns, and has started every game he's played in. Tank Dell this year in the 3rd round. He has 34 catches and 5 touchdowns. Newsflash, guy's fucking sweet. That's a good draft pick. I also think you have to factor in CJ Stroud, like I said, because they sucked, partly because they didn't have a quarterback, and they reset the whole thing. So it led them to that. And then you have to factor in now, because it looked like, could the Browns win like 12 games? Well, the Browns aren't winning 12 games anymore. At best, they're winning 10. Who knows? Maybe they go like 2-6 down the stretch. This is a pretty big gut punch. Well, you have their 1st-round pick as well this year and a 4th rounder. So the Houston Texans, this is one of the greatest trades in the history of the league. Because you also have to factor in, you could argue in all of sports, what the guy does on the other side. He got a contract. No one's ever getting a fully guaranteed contract ever again. And this is a great example. $230 million for a guy who now has a broken shoulder and was suspended. You're just never seeing this again. It's never happening. And it was never happening before him. It's never happening after him. Because in the sport of football, it's just not worth it to tie yourself to a situation in a sport where guys get injured. It doesn't mean guys aren't fairly compensated. Players love acting like everyone's getting screwed. Like Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, if they had a devastating injury, they're still fine. They're still taken care of. But there's a reason you don't give guaranteed contracts in this sport. It's bad business. It's simply awful business. And Deshaun Watson is going to be the poster boy for that going forward. And the Houston Texans, a lot like Seattle a couple years, like when you want out of business with a quarterback, it's rare that you just get rid of that guy and he goes on to become Steve Young. Like those days feel kind of over. When you're good, you're on the team. Sometimes it happens in college, right? We saw it with Joe Burrow at Ohio State, goes to LSU, becomes a star. But I would say for the most part, in the pros, when you're good, usually, and think about this, most of the good players, high character guys. Teams love being around you. Deshaun Watson's a walking, talking red flag. You can't trust this guy out of the building. So the Houston Texans, props to them for nailing this one. And if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, it just feels like same shit, different pile, man. How do we get so unlucky? What did we do to the football gods to deserve this? And my answer is I don't know, but I feel for you.
Can you believe we're this deep into the NFL season? We got to make every second count. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you can make the most out of every game. Bet on your favorite teams for a shot at winning big bucks. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting $5 on any matchup. So right now, get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on the NFL. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours.
Let's fly around the league a little bit. I heard Coward say this, and then I Googled it. Orlovsky, I don't know if he said it on Get Up or on Instagram that Belichick is not going to be the Patriots' next head coach. It's already determined where he's going to go. And a lot of people think it's Washington. They're going to trade for him or whatever. Listen, Belichick's never going to be the Patriot coach after this season. It's over. And it's been pretty clear, I would say, the last month, like, this ain't working. He's not going to be the coach. The Crafts are going to do to Belichick what Belichick did to every player he ever had. Be cutthroat. Like, it just, when you're trending the wrong way, get rid of you. Also, part of being a coach, like, you don't get to just be the coach forever. That's not how it works. Whether it's your message, whether you lose your fastball, whether you just need to change. I mean, part of this is like, you just watch the team. Like, Belichick, it's not that he's forgot everything about defensive football or about schemes or about how to get guys open or who to take out on the other team in terms of the game plan. He just needs a change of scenery. Like, change of scenery, and I've been through it several times, is the healthiest thing you can do. It really is, whether it's a new relationship, whether it's a new job, whether it's moving. And that could be, to a different neighborhood or could be to a different state. Could be to, a new girlfriend or just breaking up with somebody. Sometimes change isn't just inevitable. It's a must if you want to grow, if you want to get your life back on track. And let's face it, Bill's football life is in fucking shambles. It's an embarrassment right now. So if I'm Bill Belichick, I wouldn't even, now I understand him, prideful, old guy, rich. He's not going to tap out. So I don't expect him to be like, I'm over it. But I do think, like, if he could take a step back, take a deep breath, it's time. This thing is, something weird's going on. I do wonder if Frank Reich in Carolina is coaching for his job, because he was the play caller to start the season. Then he gave it to his offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, and then he's taken the play calling back. To me, this has crazy rich owner written all over it. And I think you have to wonder, is Frank the coach in 2024? Now, that'd be a lot of money. I would say the owner got off a little easy with Matt Rule because he got another job pretty quickly. Offsets, doesn't owe him as much as he would have. Frank would not get another job in terms of being a head coach that would offset the money that I'm sure he paid him. But I couldn't even blame. Now, I blame Dave Tepper for hiring this guy in the first place. I would not have hired Frank Reich. But I can't blame him at the end of the season for firing everybody. Fire the GM, fire the coach, and just start fresh. Now, here's the problem. If you're a Panther fan, what faith would you have that David Tepper would get it right? Right? Think about the first time. What did he do? He went all in on Matt Rule. Now, in fairness to him, every fucking writer for The Athletic and SI.com was right. Matt Rule is the next great NFL coach. And then you Google his resume. He coached 1 year in the NFL as an assistant offensive line coach. You're like, well, are we sure? Like, are we really sure? Like, what would tell us that Matt Rule is going to be the next great head coach? Because he's a good leader? Because he looks the part in a coaching outfit? Like, looking back, that's kind of crazy. Like, is he even a good college coach? Had an impressive year at Baylor. Is he going to win in Nebraska? I doubt it. Nowhere near what they think they're going to get. Give some pretty good pregame speeches that go on Instagram, but a lot of if I die speeches go, and then you lose the game. So I don't know. I think the Panthers got a lot of issues, and if I'm a Panther fan, I would be ready if you keep losing. Newsflash, you're gonna keep losing for Tepper to fire everybody. And something interesting I saw: Belichick, they cut Jack Jones, the corner, who last year looked like really good. Then he got in trouble, he got benched, and the Raiders claimed him. And then you Google it, you realize Antonio Pierce coached him in high school, coached him again at Arizona State, and Jack Jones is a very, very talented player. This to me, like the Raiders are getting back on brand. This is what they do. They take troubled people, and the history of the franchise. And to me, Antonio Pierce is everything the Raiders want. He's just got to win now. You win a game like this week where you're a 10-point underdog at Miami, not a soul's going to pick you. All of a sudden, like, hell, you might be named the real coach before the year's even over. But you got to win some real games. And I like the Raiders kind of just embracing who they are. We're renegades. Everyone talks shit about us. We fucking hate authority. I kind of do too, so I can relate. But I'm fascinated by the Raiders. And I think this week, that game against Miami would go a long, long way for Antonio Pierce. Wouldn't shock me Antonio Pierce wins this 3 in a row. Be like Mark Davis just hires him full-time on Monday. Let's end with this. Let me just get this out of here because people will call me a hater, and don't totally blame them. When I got fired with the Eagles, I technically didn't have my contract renewed. Chip Kelly had taken over and brought in a guy that he knew. Now, listen, that's 10 years ago. My life is dramatically better and became dramatically better several years after. And it led me to go on to the profession that I'm in now, which I'm much more suited to. Now, at the time, it sucked. It was embarrassing is probably the wrong word, but there's some of that. There's some just, pity party that you throw when you're in your late 20s, an ambitious person, and you get fired, contract not renewed, just let go, don't have a job for the first time in your life. And most people, everybody in my life doesn't work in the NFL. So they, my mom, my dad, family, friends, like they don't quite understand. Like where I come from, when you get fired because you're lazy, you're late, you're not good. In football, you're hired to be fired, and new administration comes in, you get let go. It's a kick in the dick. So immediately after him, I definitely did not like the guy. As time goes on, I truly don't care. Now, I know a lot of people that I worked with in Philly. Some of them are still there. Some of them around. They can't stand the guy. So I've never been a fan because I don't think he's a great person. Like he's not the type guy that I associate with, that I like to know. I think once upon a time at Oregon, he was a fantastic coach. But rumors are that he's going to get fired at UCLA. Now, this is not like my take right now has zero agenda. I truly believe this. And the record reflects it. He's 33-33 at UCLA, and he's 25-25 in the Pac-12. And I think that represents his entire operation post everything that happened in Philly. Because I think at Oregon, he was a badass, and he was an ass kicker. I even think at Philly, he was all in. But I think ever since he got fired in Philly, the players turned on him. Even the guy that the Niners had, has been a mail-it-in guy. Got super rich, got anointed, and has never cared since. I don't think he gave a shit about one game at the 49ers. I know, I was there. I watched it. They won 2 games. They had the worst defense in the history of the franchise. Even at UCLA, like when they win or they lose, I do not think he cares. I think he is completely indifferent, right? Lincoln Riley, for example, is having an awful year for the expectations. When they lose, I do believe it devastates him. It really, really hurts. Like Deion Sanders, when he's losing games at Colorado, I think he does not like it. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, all the coaches around the country who are really famous. Ryan Day, Harbaugh, like they care a lot about the program. I think Chip Kelly is going through the motions, and I think he's been doing it for years. I've been saying forever, you cannot take this guy into the Big Ten. You're not playing the fucking Pac-12 anymore. You're not playing ASU and, before Deion got there, Colorado and Arizona before Fish got there. This ain't it. Every team you're playing, even if they're overrated, truly gives a shit. Like Luke Fickell, his effort. Matt Rule, his effort. Whether the teams are good or not, they're all in, and their coach is all in. Chip Kelly's not an all-in guy. You had to remove him. And to me, there's one option. The dude's from Los Angeles. He coaches a style that will translate in the Big Ten. It's Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, who played quarterback there with Chad Johnson in the late 90s, early 2000s, then went on to coach and be an assistant for Chris Peterson at Boise and Washington before going to Oregon State. He currently has Oregon State in the top 15. Now, there's a decent chance they lose their last 2 games. They play Washington this week and then Oregon. But to me, that's a no-brainer hire. He's from Los Angeles, and guess what? He truly gives a shit. He actually cares. Football still means everything to him. Now, I don't think that Chip Kelly doesn't care as much about football, but in terms of the program, the whole thing, part of being a college football coach, Jim Harbaugh, Colin talks about this a lot, is not getting on his knees and giving all the big boosters a circle jerk. That's not his deal. You can do that when you're kicking ass and taking names, right? Ryan Day, probably doing that a lot, right? Some of these coaches probably doing that a lot. Sarkisian, doing that a lot. That's part of being a college coach. But Chip Kelly, you can't go 33-33 and 25-25 in your career in the conference at the school and not do all the other stuff. This is not the pros. It can't just be all about ball. These guys also go to school, right? The boosters pay for all this shit. They cut checks for your salary. And he doesn't care about any of that, which he'd get away with once upon a time at Oregon. But in 2023, given his ROI as a coach, no. And he's never going to change. Not with the level of wealth he has now. So to me, I would have fired him a couple years ago, but he kind of just felt like they gave them some credibility. They weren't a disaster. You cannot take this guy in the Big Ten. You absolutely cannot. So if the rumors are true, it's not just the right move, but now it's about getting the right guy. And to me, Jonathan Smith, I wouldn't even interview anyone else. He would be the guy I would circle, I would hire, and we'd go into the Big Ten with Jonathan Smith. Hot take, I don't think there's that big a difference between Jonathan Smith and Lincoln Riley. I really don't. And another hot take, the mindset and the way Jonathan Smith thinks about football is what translates to wins. Defense, physicality. Lincoln likes quarterbacks and scoring points, hates defense. Jonathan Smith cares about defense, cares about running the ball down your throat with a quarterback under center. Reminds me of Dan Lanning and DeBoer. Those guys are going to translate to the Big Ten. Chip Kelly was never going to translate to the Big Ten. Honestly, Lincoln might struggle if he doesn't fucking figure it out and get a defensive coordinator. But UCLA, let's go hire the right guy now.